To be compliant with the City of Cape Town's bylaws, as well as being fully registered with the Western Cape Education Department, ECD centres that accommodate 7 or more children have to make sure they have various local government approvals and compliances in place. In the City of Cape Town, that's namely your zoning or your land use approval, and then you need your building plan approval in place, after which you can get your fire clearance and then your health clearance certificates. And although these clearances are important from a health and safety perspective when it comes to caring for children in an ECD centre, they are incredibly difficult to get. They take very long. There are massive fees and charges attached to getting some of these compliances, and it is a complicated process for ECD centre principals to navigate on their own. So many centres across actually South Africa, and more specifically in the City of Cape Town, don't have these municipal compliances in place, which means they can't ensure that the environments are safe and it's a healthy environment for children to thrive in. And importantly, centres that serve vulnerable communities and the marginalised communities are unable to access the crucial government support of currently it's 17 Rand per child per day, and it's said to increase to 24 Rand per child per day. And so it is critically important that these barriers or obstacles to municipal compliance get addressed so that ECD centres can be compliant, they can be safe, and they can access government funding. Anna Marie's Educare and Aftercare started like many ECD centres do in the City of Cape Town, the Western Cape Province, as well as across South Africa, where she saw a need in the community and she realized that these children needed to have a place where they're cared for, where they're fed, where they're stimulated, while their parents have to go to work. So she has an ECD centre based in Kales River, and it serves the children in Kales River as well as Umfeleni, Blue Downs, and Easterriffy. She had started this ECD centre and she thought everything was okay. She then got served with a notice to comply from the City of Cape Town. And that's when she realized she needed land use permission from the City of Cape Town in order to operate an ECD centre from her home. So this was her first experience of saying, look, you're actually breaking a municipal bylaw. Can you please cease your operations and comply so that you're no longer engaging in unlawful conduct? Which in any other world seems like a fair response to a business that's operating illegally. But for Anna Marie, she knew she couldn't close the centre down.
When I was told to close, it felt like my world turns upside down. I worked before. I left my job to come and do this. This is my passion. This is a love because of the love of children. I started small and then we grow. And this is also my bread and butter. So with all the stress adding, police coming, law enforcement, the City of Cape Town, their inspectors come. I ended up in hospital. I was hospitalized for a week.
But for Anna Marie, she knew she couldn't close the centre down. She was deeply rooted in the community. She knew she had to keep the children safe, and where would the children go if they closed down? And so understandably, she was acting against the law and she kept the centre open. What landed up happening is she then was criminally charged for acting unlawfully and not having the land use permissions in place to operate the ECD centre, which led to absolute chaos and mayhem and stress on her behalf. She had to appear in front of the magistrate countless times, pleading her case, explaining why the centre needs to be operated. This isn't a business that can easily be closed and then reopened once this municipal compliance is reached.
For the love of the children and for the families. Because remember, they depend on me. They come to me and ask me to keep their children safe here. So what do I tell them now? Sorry, I can't. Sorry, I'm not allowed. And this is where I started in saying, no, I'm not gonna. I have to stand for these children. And when I looked at their faces, their hugs, their smiles, and I said, no, I can't give up. I can't give up. They give me the passion, the energy to push and to push again.
She then decided to start this process of getting her land use permission in place because she said she didn't have it in place and she understood she needed to, but it was way too complicated. She landed up having to hire a consultant to actually navigate the process for her, which she had to pay for. She also had to pay for a noise impact assessment. Along the way, she was told that in terms of the bylaws and the norms and standards, her centre needs to provide for 6 parking bays, which made absolutely no sense to her because none of the teachers had cars and most of the children came from the surrounding communities or via public transport. So there was no need for parking bays to house cars that wouldn't be housed, essentially. But in compliance, she decided to cut back on very important outdoor play space for children in order to accommodate the required 6 parking bays. After doing all of this, after paying all that money, listening to everything that she needed to do, her land use application was denied. So she did not get approval. And at that point, she didn't know what to do. She then heard about the Centre for Early Childhood Development and the fact that we have an Advocacy and Social Justice unit. And in complete desperation, she approached us asking us for any help because she just could not close the centre down. And we then stepped in with legal support to essentially appeal the decision to deny her land use approval. And we were successful and she was granted the requisite land use permission to operate an ECD centre from her home.
I'm in a better space now. Doors are open for me. There is still things that I need to do to comply, but it can't compare to where I was and what I went through. So for now, I am much at ease and I see light in the tunnel. I see light because of help, support of Centre for Early Childhood Development. I see light. So I spread the news. I tell the people there's help, and I invite them to meetings. Come to a forum, explain to my people there is help because a lot of them are sitting there still they don't know what to do.
What that meant for her is, right now she could move on to the next stage of compliance, which is to get your building plans approved by the City of Cape Town. And she could do that without our assistance. And we are very excited to know that she's in the process of making sure that her centre is safe. After she gets the building plan approved, she'll then be able to apply for the important fire and health clearance certificates for her children and ultimately also access the subsidy from government. Michelle Wagner is the principal of Legos Daycare based in Grassy Park, and they accommodate around 80 children. She started off her centre because there was a need in the community, so she didn't have the necessary land use approval in place, but she knew she had to get it in place. So from the beginning, she tried everything in her power to do so. What landed up happening is when she approached the city to become compliant, she was then asked to pay an administrative penalty of 4,000 Rand. And this came as a surprise. She had no idea this was going to take place. But essentially, an administrative penalty from the City of Cape Town gets imposed when you operate a centre without the requisite land use approval in place, or you do building work without the approved building plan in place. So she was going to the city saying, I would like to become compliant, which made the city realize she wasn't compliant, and so she was charged a penalty for not being compliant. So that was the first discovery that came to our attention, that centres that try to become compliant then get penalized by this penalty, which will inevitably scare principals from wanting to be compliant.
I needed an administrative penalty that was paid, that I needed to pay, and that was 4,000 Rand. I paid the administrative penalty, and now I was busy with the town planner, a planner at the City of Cape Town, saying, okay, I want 80 children. What else do I need to do in order for you to prove the 80 children?
She worked through the land use approval process, and it took 4.5 years to finally get the approval in place. She did all of this without the help of the Centre for Early Childhood Development, and she had hired various people to help her do that. So she then got hit with a development charge of 195,000 Rand attached to her land use approval. And essentially what this development charge is the city saying, you're developing this piece of land and you have to pay a contribution towards the cost of covering the additional pressure on municipal engineering services supplied to that property. So that includes water, sewage, solid waste, roads, and therefore you have to pay this bulk charge of sorts, which is called a development charge.
That is when I was just, I can't do this, so maybe we should close down. It's either I pay the 194,000 or I drop to 34 children. But once I hit 35 children, developmental charges comes into play.
And there was just no world in which you would be able to raise 195,000 Rand.
My greatest concern was there is no way on a monthly basis that I'm going to be able to even take a 20,000, a 30,000, save that towards having to pay developmental charges of 194,000 that is escalating every year because annually it goes up. So by the time when I get to 194,000, my developmental charge would be close to 300,000. You know, I belong to a principals forum in Crawford, and since speaking to one of my principal friends, she told me she was also slapped with a developmental charge, and she's in the Lansdowne area of 184,000. At the time, she actually rallied and they ended up paying the developmental charges. Up until today, she's not registered. It made no difference to her situation at all. I said, look, I'm going to push this as far as I can because I really don't have the money to pay this. I got an email from Centre of Early Childhood Development to attend a workshop, and I know them and I've been on their database. And I was sitting at work one day just really very frustrated by it all and not knowing which way to turn. And I was thinking maybe I should just go to them because it's weighing me down so much.
She approached us, which allowed us to start working with the city to understand this development charge.
I literally came from feeling there's no point, I'm never going to get through this because doing the right thing is important to me. And that's where I decided, okay, if they're willing to help me and push with me, then we're going to fight this. I'm going to make sure that I give them every information that they need, every bit of information. I'm going to work with them in order to necessarily do what we have to, not to be exempt from it per se, but to understand it better and to then make payment arrangements.
The first thing we did was try to use the appeals process. You know, you can appeal a condition to a land use approval decision, and we said for various reasons she can't pay it. But even more than that, most of the development charge was to cover the cost of the municipal engineering services around roads and transport. But so many kids were walking to school with their parents, were walking to the preschool, and the school itself, or the preschool, is parallel to the M5, which is a main road that many people anyway use on their way to work. So children were being dropped off by their parents who would use that same road regardless of having to drop their children off to go to work. And what we learned then in the appeals process, that was actually a reasonable ground to reduce this development charge. You know, you don't need to pay that amount to cover the cost of additional pressure on roads. And her development charge was then reduced by over 100,000 and it became 86,000 Rand.
My maths is not so good, but I think it was a 75% discount that they were willing to give because now we're starting to oppose. We're starting to ask questions. We're starting to say, explain to us what is the reason. And when I say us, I am referring to the wonderful ladies at CECD and myself who worked together and that really pushed the boundaries now to ask them that they should explain to us where the developmental charges is coming from, explain the reason for it, and what is the criteria then to be exempt from it.
She still couldn't pay the 86,000 Rand. These are still massive amounts for ECD centres to pay, and it was impossible for her to do this. We then said, well, let's try use a different mechanism that the City of Cape Town has in place, and we use the exemption of development charges for ECD centers specifically, and we were successful in that.
Being exempt from it not just took a whole load off my shoulders and gave me the freedom and just the peace that, okay, at least now I don't have to pay developmental charges. I still have a pending building plan that needs to be approved with the city that I am waiting on. And then I need health inspection to come out. And then that would be my final in order to clear registration for 80 children comfortably at the center at the moment.
These walk-in cases led to us wanting to see systemic change. We couldn't continue to help centers on an individual case-by-case basis. We needed the system to change. We needed to get to the root of the problem and address the challenges, which led to us approaching the city of Cape Town. And the executive mayor, Jordan Hay Lewis, then set up an ECD task team, which really was the game changer. We have a task team with all the relevant departments that an ECD center has to interact with in order to be compliant along all the stages of municipal compliance in that task team, so we can collectively see the range of challenges. We then have more than 10 work streams where we can focus on the different issues. So it was the administrative penalty, then it was the development charge, and we're working our way along the issues in the order that ECD center principals experience it. So naturally, the first thing we're focusing on is all issues around land use approval stage. This is really where we're seeing the progress, and what it shows is that the sustained momentum of the ECD task team, coupled with strong political will, has allowed us to progress so far. We have met the mayor and the deputy mayor who lead this task team a total of 12 times since December 2022, which really goes to show the commitment by the city of Cape Town to make a difference for ECD centers in this municipality.